Tim Pool is talking about Nick Fuentes, who has been a guest on Tim Pool's show. Nick Fuentes is a white supremacist, a basically self-described one, a neo-Nazi. And he was removed from a Turning Points Action event over this past week. Now, Nick Fuentes is an extreme anti-Semite, so that should color your perception of how Tim Pool characterizes this. But here he is responding to that and getting a little bit pissy.
Country that is the world police. So I believe in this country, its founding, and I think we're wasting money on foreign excursions. Here's the problem. When Nick Fuentes says independence from Israel, I assure you the average person believes that's ridiculous. They have their audience. The average person likes Israel. They do not agree with Nick Fuentes on this one. The other big issue is that a lot of Christians, a lot of evangelicals want us to help Israel because of the Holy Land. Regardless, my attitude is this: my guy, I'm trying to go to people and say, America first. And the first thing that pops in their minds is Nick Fuentes hates Israel.
That's not true.
What does that have to do with us securing our borders, bringing jobs back, getting rid of people like Joe Biden, getting accountability for the corruption, cleaning up our streets? No idea. No idea. I believe, whether intentionally or not, it is sabotaging the idea of America first. They take the name, they take the brand, and they taint it. They poison the well. That's why a lot of people accuse him of being a Fed. I don't know about all that. What I can tell you is there's a lot of people who aren't going to say America first, because Nick Fuentes certainly is the most famous person pushing that message. Now, I do get Donald Trump pushes that message.
So here we go. I finally deciphered what he's so angry about. He's upset that Nick Fuentes, who hates Israel because he's anti-Semitic, not because of the reasons we should hate Israel, he's upset that he uses the term America first and is tainting the brand because Americans love Israel, and it's bad for polling to have, a neo-Nazi tainting the brand of America first. Hey, buddy, I've got news for you. There were a lot of Nazis in America first before October 7th, and a lot of white supremacists who love Trump and the America First movement before October 7th. I don't really know if this is exactly what you think what they're arguing.
Fuentes and Shields, they actually are turds in the punch bowl of anti-Zionism that isn't anti-Semitic. That's the actual function they serve. They're not unfairly tarring America First stuff as anti-Semitic, because it is, obviously. And I mean, and to the extent that it's not anti-Semitic, it's because it hasn't contended with the fact that it supports Israel because of white supremacist reasons on the flip side. Like, there's racism on both sides of this coin, and Tim would much rather it wasn't flipped in the first place.
And I'm just going to go quickly to Wikipedia here. The America First Committee was an isolationist pressure group against the United States' entry into World War II, launched in September 1940. It surpassed 800,000 members in 450 chapters at its peak. The AFC principally supported isolationism for its own sake, ... However, it was controversial for the anti-Semitic and pro-fascist views of some of its most prominent speakers, leaders, and members. It was dissolved after Pearl Harbor, but America First, as a committee, was known for its anti-Semitism, literally from the origination of the term America First.
Well, I mean, since he references Christian evangelicals and their support for Israel, his main point seems to be that he's the wrong kind of anti-Semite, because Christian evangelicals are also anti-Semitic. They just use their anti-Semitism to support Israel. And right. I do think that, anti-Semitism is dividing the right. It's, they're split on what kind of anti-Semite you should be. Should you be the pro-Israel, pro-Zionist anti-Semite, or should you be the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist, at least ostensibly anti-Semite? And there's just a schism on the right, because they feel as though it's a blow to be anti-Israel to to their respectability amongst, more mainstream right circles. Like, I think Nick Fuentes, maybe not on this particular anti-Israel issue, is one of the things that more well-established right-wingers don't like, because he gives up the grift. That, he makes them look bad by saying the same things they basically say, but being like, nope, I'm a Nazi.
Yeah.
And, and because those positions are at least crypto-fascist or proto-fascist. And so when he comes out and says that, it's not so hard to make the logical jump that, like, oh, anyone else who supports things like this probably also has those fascistic ideological tendencies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
this really comes across to me as a quintessential, like, Tim Pool fishing for content type clip. Like, he knows that the vast majority of people aren't going to consider Nick Fuentes when, discussing or, debating these issues. Sure, Nick Fuentes has his supporter base, and he is a figure on the right. But the masses that he's talking about, the people who aren't in the political bubbles, they really probably, if they've even heard of Nick Fuentes, it's in passing. He's just looking, he really has transformed into, like, the Krasensteins of the right. Like, he's like, just like the Krasensteins are only there to make money off of Twitter and defend Joe Biden no matter what. Tim Pool has fully dove into doing whatever possible to keep his YouTube money flowing. I mean, he's been very clear. He's admitted it himself. He shuts off the stream when a guest dares to say something that could put his revenue in danger. And
well, to be fair to him, it's because they're often saying we need to kill people over and over on his program, literally.
Yes, but that's on him for inviting those people to the show. But also, he's also come to the point where he defends Trump no matter what. He'll defend Trump. No, like, it's funny because he has hooked himself to this mainstream Republican base. So if anything, he's not really so much worried about what Nick Fuentes is saying. He's worried that Nick Fuentes could somehow, affect what he's got going for himself with his little, his right-wing YouTube channel.
Well, also people, and that's a good point, Matt, people like Nick Fuentes kind of forced people like Tim Pool's hand, because there are people, there are right-wing commentators who just give up the dog whistles and they just say what everyone knows they mean. And just like anyone who takes a further right position in our political system, they're automatically going to attract more and more of a base, especially amongst viewers like Tim Pool's or like Ben Shapiro's, who aren't so stupid as to not fully realize what is being pitched to them. And so he's a competition. He's competition for the same, population of groped out teenagers, of red pilled man cells, or whatever they call themselves. And he has to weigh saying things like Nick Fuentes says and getting those people as part of his audience with the obvious monetary and respectability cost that saying those things obviously have on your brand. And so the more Nick Fuentes gets promoted, the more more out and out neo-fascists and right-wingers become mainstream, at least amongst online, groped out circles, the more it forces people who automatically want to monetize those people to either adopt those positions or risk losing their market share.
I mean, that's exactly right. This is Tim being forced to take a position, which is why you made him so uncomfortable when you were in studio.
On Israel.
Because he knows he can't, when he says Israel is very popular, people, no, it's Tim has a lot of connections with people who say don't go and be too anti-Israel. Actually, because he has people that are regular on the show who are belligerent supporters of Israel, and that's never going to change. So he has to avoid it entirely, and he hates having to do that because he's, the milquetoast fence sitter.
Yeah,
people probably comment on it.
It's great because his whole purpose to being was, everyone else is just regurgitating what the audience wants them to hear, what the audience wants to hear. Excuse me, and I don't think there's any example of any sort of new media YouTube star in the political space who's more beholden to audience capture than Tim Pool, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100%.
No, we could go on to. I bet if we went to his Twitter right now and see him tweeting about any of these things, there are going to be people in his mentions talking about like, how come you won't speak the real truth? How come you won't answer the JQ? How come you won't do all of these things that Nick Fuentes will do? And, it's a question that the obvious answer would be that, he's probably not as anti-Semitic as Nick Fuentes is, but who knows? But ultimately, it would impact his ability to make money, at least amongst the circles he's currently making money from. But whoever's asking that is a client that he's losing by not adopting those standpoints.
Fizzy Drink says Tim Pool's job is to launder and obfuscate the same ideology that Nick Fuentes spews out unfiltered, which is exactly right. And he had Fuentes on when Kanye came on with him as well. Mm-hmm. And this was when Kanye was saying, "I love Hitler" over and over again. So let's not. Tim Pool doesn't really believe in much, except he's become a right winger at this point because that's where the money and the gravy train is gone. But you palling around and platforming neo-Nazis over and over again doesn't doesn't mean that you get to walk away cleanly and be like, you're hurting the movement by being a neo-Nazi, former guest of mine, Nick Fuentes. It's just ridiculous.
He goes on to basically run down that he agrees with all of Nick Fuentes' beliefs except for the Israel part of it.
Right.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.